Hi. The developers of SpellForce Conquest of Eo have given an exclusive interview to the German gaming news publisher GameStar, which gave us some more info about the game. I'll do my best to summarize the main points from it here, so without further ado, here's what they said. Like we already knew, the game will be a turn-based strategy, similar to Heroes of Might and Magic. Their goal is to connect elements of an RPG, tactics, and global strategy in a way that makes sense, while at the same time making story fans happy. The last part is very important, since now I'm definitely expecting a canon game out of this. They mentioned the return of familiar cities from SpellForce 2, like Lorraine or Seven Keeps, which suggests that the story will take place in the Highmark on Fiara. Though the cities on the maps are in fixed locations, they say that things like resources, quests, and wandering enemies are procedurally generated, so those things will likely change during different playthroughs. The story itself is said to take place 100 years after the creation of the Circle, and our main character is an up-and-coming mage who will come to blows with the Circle mages, though they do mention that it often won't be directly, but instead by proxy. Throughout the game, we'll have our magic tower, like seen in the trailer, that we'll be able to upgrade, and that'll essentially be our base from which we'll plan things. When asked about this on the Discord, one of the developers said that it'll be even more customizable than the Westcard from SpellForce 2, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. The article then describes that our choice of magic will have an impact on how the story plays out, so that's telling me that the game will have some replayability. They specifically mention necromancy, alchemy, elemental magic, and rune magic, though from the context, rune magic seems to be something like enchantments and buffs, rather than pulling the ability to bind people to the rune out of your ass. It's mentioned that the title Conquest of Eo is a bit misleading. We won't really be conquering land or cities, but instead we'll make connections and gather influence and resources which we'll then use to upgrade our tower. This is good because from a canonical perspective, the Circle mages wouldn't have allowed a mage to just randomly take over big cities, so this is a nice alternative of slowly spreading your influence over the region. They also say that the Circle won't really sit idle as we do this either, and they will send troops our way, so I'm curious to see how this will play out. At this point, the Circle mages had mastered the Archfire, thus taking them on directly isn't really an option if we're staying true to canon, so the only way I see it happening is if they try to deal with us indirectly. They also say that we'll often have a few choices when it comes to influencing different parties. Certain choices will make them more inclined to help us, while others will do the opposite, which will then influence the help we can get from them. The nicer you are to someone, the better the rewards. One playthrough is said to take us 20 to 30 hours, which is pretty lengthy, and if my assumptions about replayability are correct, it could stretch to a lot more. The game will have 12 heroes, which we'll be able to recruit, but only 3 at once, and they won't all be with us from the start, so we'll be met with the choice of either keeping an older hero that we've upgraded or replacing them with a higher ranking one. These choices aren't final though, as you can always swap back and forth between heroes. They'll also be able to influence our troops in battle with certain buffs, so combining them in a complementary way seems to be the name of the game here. In total, there should be around 400 to 500 quests in the game for us, which is quite a bit. They state that we won't really have massive armies and that we'll have to use the resources we have to get the best out of it. As mentioned, we won't be able to conquer cities or anything like that, but we'll be able to make small camp outposts that will play a strategic role in the game. The terrain will also play a role in the gameplay, as they say that some troops will be better on certain terrain than others. In total, there should be around 35 different terrain types like that. Now, to address the elephant in the room when it comes to the story, many of you have likely seen this image mentioning the purity of light, which wasn't really met with the best reactions. I do believe that this can work inside the canon, but it needs a few adjustments. The purity itself wasn't law-breaking in SpellForce 3, the things that made no sense were some of the stuff they were able to do, like bind people to runes and create blades. So, the idea of the purity can be included of the canon, some things just need to be rewritten slightly to fit. I think these should be all the major details from the interview. A lot of interesting info, especially regarding the gameplay and story. If they really want to make story fans happy with this game, as they claim they do, certain aspects must be handled accordingly. Using elements from SpellForce 3 is understandable because the game uses a lot of assets from that game, and they aren't inherently wrong as ideas, but the fine details need to be adjusted, otherwise we'll end up with an incoherent mess that will only complicate things further. But what do you think? Are you looking forward to playing Conquest of Eo, or is it not your cup of tea? Let me know in the comments. Until next time.